All right, so we're all here to talk about Gibbs 2022. It was released at the end of October, and so far so good. We put a lot of effort into the Q&A side of things. So I mean, there's always going to be little hits or misses or little bugs that pop up in the software, but quality-wise, this one has been substantially improved over previous releases, and that was kind of the target from the onset for 2022. So I wanted to go through a few really quick things just to make sure we're all on the same page before we jump into the actual nitty-gritty of what's in 2022. I'm Zach Casto, Vice President, Virtual Manufacturing. You've probably seen emails from myself before or received phone calls from me or met me face-to-face, although that hasn't been nearly as consistent as I would have liked over the last 2 years for obvious reasons. So hopefully that is changing for all of us. So myself, Matt Arnold, who you may have talked to as well, joined the team in 2020 with 20 plus years of Gibbs experience out in the further Midwest in the Minnesota neck of the woods. Dave McCrae, most of you probably know, has been with us for 13 years now, I believe, 12 or 13. And Jeff Burgard, who came over from Great Lakes CAM. He's not with us on this GOTA meeting, but he's another great technical support asset who's been using Gibbs for a very long time and is very well versed. I also wanted to put our tech support email because we notice a lot of people are asking, well, where do I send support issues? Well, if you're not sending it directly to Dave or Jeff or myself or Matt for that matter, support at virtual-mfg is a great resource because that way all of us see it, and pretty much it's whoever sees it first, whoever's been dealing with the particular customer is going to take care of it. Another one that I wanted to add to this that I forgot about is our new posts at virtual-mfg.com. Yes, that's posts, plural, P-O-S-T-S, at virtual-mfg.com. Use that for any post modification or post related questions that come up. As you'll notice, corporate is now pushing all communication customer related through us, which we prefer. We've done it that way historically, but a number of other resellers and distributors around the world haven't handled it that way. So now it's kind of a corporate mandate to where your first line of communication Gibbs related should always be us. So if you are in Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, you should be talking to virtual manufacturing first and foremost before you even think about trying to contact corporate California, because A, our response time is going to be substantially better, and B, odds are we know exactly what you have in-house, software-wise, machine-wise, and most likely what you're making. So we'll be able to help you a lot better. Something we can talk about quickly, PC recommendations, they really haven't changed all that much over the last handful of years. Now, our recommendations are a touch different than what you'll see on the corporate website, but the gist of it is you're going to want, obviously, the latest version of Windows. I'm on Windows 11. Windows 10 works fine, as it has for the last 4 or 5 years. But big thing, video card. If you're doing, especially if you're doing 3D, if you're doing 5X, if you're doing multi-spindle, multi-turret environments, you're going to want a really nice NVIDIA graphics card, preferably with a good amount of RAM, both on the video card and then dedicated RAM for programming purposes downstream. So those are kind of the gist of it. If you have specific questions on that, you can ask pretty much any of us because we've all either sourced our own computers at some point or helped customers source them at some point. This one's not really all that important, but to give you an idea, these are kind of the tiers as to how we're determining what's going into the software moving forward. It's pretty self-explanatory. Is it something that's coming from the exterior manufacturing marketplace? Is it something that you guys as customers are recommending to us? Or is it something that we deem you as the user of the software will benefit from? And now for 2022 and onwards, we have a priority legend that allows us to assign a GP1, GP2, or GP3, which is pretty self-explanatory. If it's a GP1, it's going to be in the release. It's a high priority item for us to work on, either as a new feature, a fix to the software, whatever that may be. But the big benefit for us as the reseller and for you as the end user is that you can come to us with a bug or a potential enhancement to the software. We can take that and say, okay, development, here's what customer wants, here's why we think it's beneficial. And then we can track it from that point forward. That's something previously we haven't really been able to do in the Gibbs world. So that's a big benefit for all of us, just for our own efficiencies and frankly for our sanity. And here's a look at how the Gibbs 2022 release schedule worked out. And you're going to notice 2023 is going to follow a very similar path, obviously not in the years, but date-wise. The big thing is when Cambrio came along and now Sandvik, structure was put into place to our development channel, something that we hadn't seen in the past, something that many of you as end users had noticed. You really didn't know when a release was going to be out. You know, we could give you kind of an idea. Well, now we have hard dates. And the more important thing is, as a quality assurance measure, that's telling us that, okay, well, you know what, if this portion of the software is not ready by insert your date, then it's not getting into that release. That's big for us, just for the structure of our development team. And we met all those dates, which is the most important part, I think, for all of us with 2022. And 2023 is going to follow a very similar track. We're scheduled for release October 24th of this year with what will be GibbsCAM 2023. And on that note, I think it's important that we just dive right into the new features of the software. So bear with me here for 1 second. I am going to turn over duties. And we should see the screen swap over here in just a second, guys. All right, can everyone see the GibbsCAM screen?
Yep.
Good deal. All right, take it away, Dave.
Okay, well, first off, I'd like to just say thanks, you guys, for coming, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this. I also want to thank Zach for not turning his camera on, so we don't have to all look at that unibrow. So with that said, let's just get started. Okay, one of the first things in 2022 was really excited about when I first saw this is the ability to extrude a surface, which has been a long time coming. And the more I use it, the more I realize how helpful this is. But if we go to our surface modeling palette, you're going to see a new icon here. The second one is Extrude Surface. And what drove this was our new OptiCam EDM, which required a cylinder, surface cylinder for a start hole location. So I'm glad they added it, but bottom line is we can just double click a shape, go to extrude, and extrude a sheet up like this. So it's pretty slick. In the past, I already tried this building a cylinder by using Loft before they had this functionality, because the OptiCam came out in 2014. And when you loft two circles, it winds up being a spline, not a cylinder. So this was really helpful, and I'm really glad they added that. So that's extrude a shape. A lot of you guys might have already noticed that we can now extrude multiple shapes. So in the past, it was always one at a time. So if I go here and select, let's say, these circles, after the outside shape, of course, I can go in here and say, here, let's go -1. You can extrude those all together. And then maybe a couple C-bores, I might go -0.25 and 1 inch to give me something to hang on to. And then -0.375 here, for example. And so you can extrude multiple shapes at one time. I think that's huge. And these, by the way, these all pertain to solids and surfaces. Let's open up the third one, which is extrude with taper. In the past, when we went to do a taper, you guys probably remember you were limited to one field. So now, if I select the shape, I can go both directions with the taper. So that's pretty sweet as well. This next one, the jury is kind of out on this for me, which is called section view. This is a little bit bigger file, so it takes a little bit to open. So the section view icon is up here, show section view, and it's really kind of hard to see, but you see our axis markers over here. As soon as I roll my mouse wheel on top of it, we can drag this down to see the inside of our model. Now, to me, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine and dandy, but I think they need to, and I've already submitted a request for this, is to be able to pull geometry off. And just like slice plane, when you're in this mode, you can right click, if I can find it, and set section depth to like this. But you need to be able to me, you need to be able to pull geometry off it as well.
But we are
It
able
also,
to pull, not to interrupt it, but we are able to pull geometry from that view because we can set our depth. We can set the depth of what we used to call profiler and pull geometry that way.
right.
So, I
But it
mean,
would be nice.
it's not one to, I agree, it's not one to one, like we just do it in one click like most commands in Gibbs, but you're still able to pull geometry off of this. So it's still usable. It's just not as
Yeah.
efficient as we want it to be.
So it also will work in different planes as well. So I can drag this in like this and see the inside of your model. And if I go YZ plane, same thing here. Okay. So that's section view. This next one I think is huge because particularly for new users, because one of the biggest struggles for a new user is, hey, how do I get my model in place, in position? So we have this align edge to CS horizontal. So I can select, let's say I turn face select on, select this face and go align face to CS, okay? Now, one thing a lot of people might not be aware of, and I forget when they added it, is if I go here and go align face to CS again, it'll flip the part over, which is pretty cool. So now if I turn edges on, I can select this edge and align edge to CS horizontal, and it will straighten that part out. So that one I think is a huge addition. So play around with it. You'll see it works really well. The next one here is basically, I think it's a quantum leap if you do any surface modeling at all. It's like, where have you been all my life? If I go here in this plane here and click create a surface, in the past it would always create it at 0. Now it creates it right where she sits, which is really huge for those of you who use the surface modeling palette. So you can very quickly just create your planes and not have to translate them up from 0. Because like I said, in the past, they would all be at 0. Now they can be in any orientation, and you can create a surface based off the 2D geometry. It'll stay right where it's at. Okay. Oh, my meeting thing's in the way. 1 second. Now let's go into visualization and simulation section. So I'm going to go show clearance plane lathe, which is the next function. And there's a button up here for right here, which is show clearance planes. So if I double click this, it's going to show me my clearance plane in like yellow. So if I go change my clearance, let's see in my document control to 4 inches, let's say, it's going to show you your clearance plane. So pretty sweet. And we can also do the same thing in mill. So if we go to mill, it's going to show you your clearance plane right here, and that's going to be your master clearance plane. So once again, if I kick this up, Okay. The next one is multi-part visibility in all sim modes. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on OpSim. So once again, this is multi-part. So we've got multi-part duplication here. So in the simulation button, and when they say in all modes, that means in machine sim and OpSim, you'll notice this new button here. So if you choose not to show all the parts, you just click this button. And that toggles the visibility of the multi-part. The next one is pretty huge as well. MTM Sim Playback. Oh, bear with me a second. Let me load it just as a VNC. Okay. When we go into Sim, and let's suppose I want to sim just a particular op. I'm going to go to, let's say, op 12 in the subspindle. I'm going to select that and click play. And you'll see, even though the main is still going through the motions, it's actually showing this part as it is transferred already, which it never used to do in the past. So you can actually pick or select specific ops and simulate just that op. I think it's pretty huge for MTM. Okay. Let's go on to our next section, which is kinematics and tooling. Now, I think this has tremendous potential, is the ability you're going to see here. And it's what we call configurations, machine configurations. And let me turn off edges. Go to my document control. And now you'll see a new tab up here called configurations. So I just happen to have Nick and Indexer set up on this. And I've set up a choice for Nick and Indexer on the right side or Nick and Indexer on the left side. And it does all code out correctly. So if I turn on Machine Sim, and let's load that machine. This one takes a second to load. There we go. So here we have Nick and Indexer on the right side of the machine. So if I play this real slow, and let's suppose you had another machine next to it, or the same machine, where several months down the road they put the Indexer on the other side. All I have to do is go in here into configurations and say, hey, I want that on the left side. So what's kind of cool about this is if you start thinking about this, you could do a lot of different machines, a lot of different configurations, which I have another example here shortly. So here's the Indexer on the left side. Just by clicking one button, we're switching configurations. So pretty sweet. Let's go on to another machine with 3 configurations. Okay, so this particular one has three configurations: indexer right, indexer left, or a part in the vise on the table. So with no indexers. So if I turn on sim, there's indexer on the right side of the machine. Let's stop this. At least I've learned now not to try switching it while it's running. Let's go left side. There's the indexer on the left side running the same program. Let me center this a little bit. So pretty sweet. Now, I did these files, we did a open house, or I mean an event at Ellison rather for GibbsCAM 2022. And the third one is just the one with the vise, but I could have put them all in the same program. I just didn't have time to do that. So here we just have it in a vise, same machine, with the configuration part and vise. And just do a little bit of milling on that. Okay. And if you had a different configuration such as that, all in one file, the indexers would truly disappear. One of the other new functions are within the software is we call Selectable Stock. And this requires a small change to the MDD, but here we are on a 3-axis mill, once again, same machine. And if I click cubic, our stock switches to a rectangle or square. Okay. And if I turn off sim, switch it to round, you can have round stock without actually creating a stock model for it. Okay. And that's controlled in the document control. This next one is contour multi-shape pre-drilling. I think this one's huge. And so I'm going to double click this up just so I don't have to refill stuff in. I'll delete it here on the right side, and I'll deselect these to show you how this works. I've got a standard drill process. Drag this over here. Standard drill process here, and a contour process here. So here's the interesting part. Wherever I click is basically where it's going to drill the hole. So you notice I clicked on this line, on this feature. I clicked over here on this one. Let's click on the bottom over here, bottom right. Let's click on the top here, bottom here, center here, right here, and lower left here. Click do it. Okay, and you'll notice if I go to my top view, this one's from the center, left, right, here, down to this bottom one here, this one, right, and bottom. So whatever feature that you click on, it's going to drill the hole off of that feature. So I think that's pretty sweet. Okay. Let's look at this next one. I kind of don't really understand what drove this one. Obviously, some customers asked for it, but it is square corners for roughing and turning. And I'm still trying to think of why, but I'm sure somebody has an answer out there for it. But there's now a square corner checkbox in the turning. If I uncheck it and redo the op, it behaves as it did before. So square corners. Let's move on. We're going to go to posting and output. And I'm sure you guys have noticed this is not really a new feature in V15. It isn't a new feature in 15, but we thought we would show it anyway because they've had enhancements to it. So I'm going to go ahead and simulate this first. And by the way, this is done in Tombstone Management. So this has quite a few work offsets in here. So if I go to post it, we go to work fixtures, you're going to notice a different interface depending on how old your post is. So this is a .220A post, which 220 posts are version 2022 and above. And the previous post, you'll see a .68. I think it'll work in a 68 and past, whatever 14 was. Is that right, Zach?
That is correct.
Yep. So at any rate, if I go down here and let's look at, let's say this work offset, I can make this one 54.1 P41 if I want. And just use work fixtures. Let's go selected ops just to show you this. And it's going to output G54.1 P41. Now you have several choices in here, whether you want to go by operation or by work fixture offset, okay? Let me close this out and reopen it, because we should see more than that. Oh, I have selected ops, that's probably why. Go ahead and check that, there we go. So by work fixture here, and it tells you which operations are using what work offsets, or by operation. Miscellaneous. I always like to, in these sessions, show some things people might not be aware of, and I don't know exactly what versions are that they were changed in, but if I go to preferences here, I just want to point out some things here. They did change, you know how you select rapid tool when you go to simulate? By show rapid tool right here. You now have the ability to change the color of the show rapid tool. So if I go to edit appearance settings and go to sim, rapid tool, you can now change the color. So that's one they added. Under preferences also in interface, this is one I like to show because a lot of people aren't aware of it. They have the ability to reverse the mouse wheel because a lot of people wanted the ACAD style mouse wheel zoom. This one is huge. Activate machining CS on upload, which means that whatever coordinate system, when you double click an op, it's going to jump to that coordinate system. See how that happened right there? Which that is sweet, particularly those of you who do 4 and 5 axis stuff on a regular basis. You would always in the past go up here and switch to that coordinate system. Now when you double click an op, it's going to jump to whatever CS it was created in. I think that is huge. You can turn that on and off, by the way. If I go back to preferences, this one I turn on and off all day long. Open process, dialog, and upload. So if you ever get tired of when you double click, let me turn on my tools here. If you ever get tired of when you double click having to go over here and open it up, and you want to change a bunch of ops in a hurry without using Op Manager, for example, when I double click here, it's going to automatically open this process dialog for me so I can either make changes or whatever I want to do. That's when I turn off and on all day, because if you're, sometimes this will get in the way. If I'm wanting to manipulate some geometry and I'm double clicking ops and stuff and this is showing up in front of my geometry, I'll go turn it off. So that's under File Preferences. Activate Open Process Dialog and Upload, which I'll turn off for right now. Activate Machining CS on Upload. One of the other functions now is called Break Parent-Child Link. So those of you who use Transform Toolpath, such as we've done here, we can now separate out individual ops so they're not with that. So if I wanted to skip these two, for example, normally you could just throw them out, I guess. But if we go in here and say, man, I got to look for this one. Bear with me. I wonder if that's one we turn on and off. It is not.
Dave, you passed right over it. It's at the very bottom of the list. Not in the plugins, in the turn on.
Oh.
It's like second or third from the bottom.
Down here?
No. Go back into add-in plugins. Not where you're at right now to turn them on.
Oh, okay. Plugin Manager?
Yes, sir. Tool. Oh, I did do that. That's my fault. I misread.
Yeah, no biggie. It used to be, and I don't know. I'm just either being blind right now, but there's an icon right here. I'll post it, you guys, if I might have to reset my plugins. Let me see if that will fix it. Plugins, reset. I don't see it. So I will let you guys know. We could probably post that somewhere, right, Zach?
Yeah.
I know it was there, so when I install the new software, it might be a matter of turning it on. But you can actually break the association, the parent-child association with link. Let me try, that was a pack and go. Let me try it here with a VNC file. So it might not let you do it on a pack and go. I don't know. Plugins. Still don't see it. Okay. We will post something to that nature of what we need to do to make that active. So it will break the association to where when you double click your ops, these two would not be in there. Let's see, a couple other things. One of the things you guys will notice when you're installing GibbsCAM, and for the first time you create a file, for umpteen years, it's always been tool length offset 1, cutter comp offset 51. They updated it to where now it's just H1D1, which is like, yay. Let's see, any of the other things, they've supported some new CAD file formats. I've covered everything else that way. So now let's go into 5-axis enhancements. This first one is really cool. It's been a long time coming. It's Rotary Machining, which is a new 5-axis option. And basically, you can just pick the model. And if you go here into Surface Pass, there's now Rotary Machining. So we have roughing as well as finishing in here as well. That's still a roughing op. And last one's a finishing op. Let me show you this, where we're selecting finish. And at the end of the day, basically, I select the whole model to do this. So if I double click this, toss the stock off the screen, and bring the model back out, and open this up, Surface Pass, let's go part definition, part surface. I just picked the whole thing actually for now. Click OK and redo it. I probably shouldn't be processing 5-axis toolpath on in a webinar. There we go. So, and I had too much picked. I just picked the whole model. This next feature is something really we've been asking for a long time. Let me open up the pack and go here, because I have machine sim along with this. Okay. In 5-axis path, whenever you're coming straight on, in other words, we're coming straight on here from the XY plane. Okay, if it's a flat surface, the 5-axis module will toolpath it in XY moves rather than polar cylindrical, off-center polar cylindrical, if you will. So there was a plugin that you would have to run in the past. It was under plugins here, and it would go Faceijk to polar. And it would be right in here typically. Well, now it is a standard operation modifier. So this first operation is being done with a lower turret on a twin turret machine. So if I simulate this, you're going to see, and by the way, the lower turret has no y-axis, okay? So what it's going to do is give us errors that it can't achieve the position, which we are seeing right here. Tool could not achieve required position. So basically, all I had to do, let me stop that. All I had to do to correct that was I did the same ops again right here. These are both identical to the first ones, but if I, right click on here and go operation modifiers, you're going to see Faceijk to polar. So once you've done this operation, all you have to do is select this, add it over here, and click do it. And the result will be rewind, and I'll play just these specific ops with the lower turret. Now, with the upper turret, if we go here, the upper turret does have a y-axis. So if I simulate these, it's going to go X and Y. And if I run the same modifier, rewind, the reason we're getting that error is because it's seeing these ops here too in the beginning. And that's why we're only seeing op 1 and 2 if you look there. So by applying that op modifier to this path, it switches it from XY to polar, if you will. This next one is a pretty cool feature. It's called deburring multiple cuts. I'm sure a lot of you guys will appreciate this. So here, as you see, we've run the op modifier on that. That's what the pluses are, okay? But in here, we now have the ability to do multiple cuts in a 5-axis deburring op. So I want a constant width of 40 thou. I want four passes, okay? So if we turn this on, now, in anticipation of guys saying, well, how come it keeps rotating the C axis to do that? That is just out of my laziness from the standpoint of I picked them both, okay? If I just wanted to do 4 passes on one side first, which realistically you would do, I would just pick this one here as a, let's see, part surfaces. And I should be good right there. If I just do it here. And click OK, and then go edge definition, pick this edge and click OK, and redo. Now it's going to do those 4 passes just right there. Okay. And I did the same thing with both upper and lower turrets. This one is doing both of them, and then both of these at the same time. So if I sim these, you can skip on selected ops. So if you just don't want the C to rotate like this, just do them one at a time. So that is mobile passes for deburring. This next one's really cool as well. Wrong one. Oh, no, I did multiple cuts, contact point, yes, okay. So here we've got a ball mill, and we've got a tapered end mill. And we're gonna break the edges all the way around here, so you now have the ability to control the contact point. If I go into surface pass and go to tool axis control, here we go, fixed tool contact point at cone or cylinder. So I got 0.5. That means this end mill, the first stop, the ball mill, is going to cut a 1/2 inch down. And then the contact point on the second tool, I think I left it the same. And this is a tapered end mill as well. If I go tool axis control, yeah, 1/2 inch fixed contact point. So we go to play this. I think this one's huge as well. Oh, let me turn off skip on selected ops, sorry. Okay, here we go with the ball mill. 1/2 inch up the ball mill. We're cutting that chamfer, or breaking that edge, if you will. And then now we switch tools. Oh, same tool, I'm sorry, on this one. Forgot my own demo. We're still on op 1. Then we switch tools and go to a tapered end mill to do the same cut. Okay. That's that one. Bear with me, I'm moving my menu thing out of the way here. Contact point, corner cylinder. Next one is a change to geodesic machining in 5-axis. And it's called Propagation Direction. So here, if we look, open this up, I've got surface path is geodesic machining. Pattern type is parallel to curves. If I go to this advanced here, we now have the ability to say proper propagation direction relative to the guide curve. In this case, it's right. So it's going to cut that on the right side of that curve. The next one, I'm sure, is the left side of that curve. The next one is the left side of or right side of the curve on both lines together, which if I go here and go advanced right, and I'm imagining that the next one's going to be left both together. If I go here, go advanced, it is left both of them at the same time. So this is doing the same thing with the circle. This would be cutting left, I'm assuming. Yep. And then the other option is right. So basically, in geodesic machining, you can now define a curve to cut along and either cut to the left or the right side of it. This next one is called tilt surface normal. And so here we've got this crazy shaped part to where the way Gibbs would normally cut this, since we got tool axis control, it's tilted relative to cutting direction at 0. Okay, so it's going to basically keep the tool tip normal. And now there's a new feature in here that allows us to, in tool axis control, tilted with fixed angle to surface normal. And this is our reference surface. So it's going to be tilted in reference to this surface instead of following all these whoop-de-doos around. So let's go ahead and simulate that. Yeah, Zach, in case you're wondering, whoop-de-doo is an old term that like us older guys used to use. He's not listening.
I'm just ignoring.
Okay, so here's the first stop. Okay, and I will show you the difference once we use that other surface. We rewind. And I'll skip this first op and play this one. This part shows the difference well. Okay. So now on the GibbsCAM 2022 stuff, that's all I've got. Zach, is it something you want me to go into some of the V14 stuff to highlight that people might not know about, or?
Yeah, in just a second though, I wanted to see if there's any questions that had come up from the peanut gallery, so to speak. So
Sure.
if you do, I'm going to unmute, which could be a dangerous thing, but we're going to do that. And we'll see if anybody has any questions, see if the button actually works this time. Not sure why it's not. Boy, it really wants me to go through and manually hit everyone. Weird. Yeah, it is not unmuting everybody, or at least it's not showing me. I think does everyone still show as being muted? Because I could click it a million times and it's not doing anything. Okay, well then let's go the old-fashioned way. If you have a question, hit it into the chat section, and we will try, or if you have a specific area you want us to cover from the V22 stuff. And while we're waiting on that, we can dive a little bit into the V14 stuff that may have been missed or overshadowed. I know we already covered the WFO stuff, which is probably the most important or the largest change. You want to show maybe a little bit on the probing front, Dave, and then if there's anything else, just enhancement-wise that you think.
Well,
do you have some ideas?
Yeah, I have some files already created before we go into probing.
By all means.
I can cover real quickly.
Zach, I do think you have everybody unmuted.
Okay, it's just simply not showing it to me.
They have, I think there's 6 or 8 that are showing unmuted, but the rest of them must have their mute on by themselves.
Oh, okay, all right. So even if I click it, they would still have to. Gotcha, makes sense.
Correct. And Dave, that parent-child thing, I believe you have to drag that icon onto one of your bars because I don't think it shows up on the plugin menu.
Yeah, it used to. I know that.
Yeah, it should be.
So
It's always been listed as a plugin for us.
Yeah, it's listed under a plugin, but I still have to drag it out of the customize. So it's weird.
A lot of people are unaware. This one just shows, and I'm just going to show capability basically with these files. Is a feature that was new in 14 is double milling, okay, on an MTM machine. Another thing that we support that a lot of people aren't aware of is Uaxis Turning, which I believe this is 14 as well. So if you'd have a head something like this, we can fully support this. Slow it down a little bit. And this actually does quite a bit of stuff here. And so this is moving in and out with the part. Another one that is really cool, not a lot of people have these machines, but for a big gantry style machine, is just as an example, we support head changer machines. So this is a big old Toyota where it goes over, changes heads to start with to a vertical head, drills some holes, switches heads, it'll change tools, go over here, change heads, load the tool, go back, drill some holes here, rotate to the other side, drill some holes here, rotate 90 degrees, and do the other side. So we have the ability to change heads, and it really is pretty simple. Here's right angle, here's a vertical orientation, and that's really all that's needed to be done. We also do interpolation turning. Which this happens to be on a 5-axis mill with a little bit of 5-axis tool path as well as turning on this machine. So here we go through first and mill that flange. And I'm going to zoom in here so you can really see what's going on. And then mill a chamfer around the outside. And this starts really fast, so I got to slow this down. So here we are turning the OD. And obviously you would have to have a programmable spindle for this. OD and face. And that's just doing multiple passes going in. And then we switch and do some boring on the ID here. That as well. So that is interpolation turning. I have another example of that on a horizontal, which is becoming somewhat common, or more common anyway. So if I turn this on, we can turn that OD and chamfer and the angle as well. And then we'll rotate and do the other side. And I believe that is it is not TMS, okay? And we also have the ability, people are doing more of this on vertical or 5-axis milling machines, and just doing some straight turning on this. And so this first one is roughing it horizontally and then vertically finishing it, okay? On the probing side, now the probing files I don't have in order, so you got to bear with me. We have a suite of probing tools here. You can also create your own probing tool, if you will, or a custom form, 2D and 3D as well. And we have the ability to probe for both work fixture offset and for measurement. We also have the ability with go-tos to measure if it's undersized, for example. We can go to here, for example, we can say if it's undersized by a thou, we go back to this tile here, which is 4, which is a go-to, and it'll go back and recut that and remeasure again after that. So, and there's all kind of functionality here as far as whether you want to do 3-point, 4-point, what the angles are. You could set them at different angles. And so in the long run, touching the top of the part, setting the work fixture offset. And this is just going to be cutting your, or using the Renishaw software within the control to do this. Same file, basically. In-process probing right here is another example. So we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of volume mill path. So they were probing it after that. That's what these little dots are. Sorry, that went a little bit quick. I can slow this down a little bit and actually skip ahead. And there we are probing that hole after it's milled. With a couple of go-tos when it's measuring it to go back to a specific location to recut. We also have for those that aren't aware, we also, as of V14, have a new wire package. It's called GibbsCAM, which was what was driving the surface modeling to have the ability to extrude. Which this is all completely solids based now. And those of you who have used the old GibbsCAM wire, I intentionally use this particular demo because it shows really well. And you know how brutal it was in the old software. Basically, all I did here is click the surface model, and let's go into graphic simulation. Pick the surface model, and it finds everything. So we not stop there, okay? And that's our GibbsCAM EDM software that's new within GibbsCAM. Anything else you can think of, Zach? That's about all I have.
No, there's nothing additional I could think of on these two items. One of the questions that came up that maybe you would have a little more insight on, if you could think of anything new added to the either just the 2.5D solid based portion of the software through V14 or 2022, or more specifically on the mill turn side. Short of the square corners edition, I couldn't really think of anything else that was really exclusively for that portion of the software, those two portions. So, yeah,
2.5D solids. I really can't think anything specific.
Exactly, that's kind of where I was at too. The one thing I did think of was volley turn being added as a good addition on the mill turn side, and obviously it would have to be solids based. Well, actually, no, it wouldn't for that particular module. So, and that's something that's standard for everyone now. Volley turn. But other than that, no, I can't think of anything. So
a lot of people, Zach, might not be aware that step is standard as well.
There's actually a couple things that I wanted to cover before we did get off, and then also a few more items that I will cover. I'm going to cut the recording off here, and then we'll keep this going. So give me a second. Let me stop that.